In terms of your work in the army, what skills in particular would you say you took forward? You were mentioning.
Well, if we go back to my basic radio training in 1TR, I learnt about valves, how valves worked, how to calculate the value of the components like resistors and capacitors that went around the valve. When I went to the School of Signals with all this fantastic test gear, I learnt how to use signal generators, oscilloscopes, how to design power supplies. So when I left the army, I had an absolutely brilliant grounding in electronics.
Which I presume you couldn't have got anywhere else at any college? Or...
Not at that time, no, not at all.
And what did you want to do with those skills you had developed? What was your ambition?
Well, my aunt, this very Victorian spinster, gave me quite a bit of money when I passed my O-levels. And I suppose I got the money when I was about halfway through my 2-year national service. And I bought 3 things. I bought a Vortexian tape machine. I bought a Vortexian mixer, which are generally associated now with Joe Meek. And I bought a Film Industries M8 ribbon microphone, immediately followed by another M8 ribbon microphone and an STC 4033 cardioid microphone. They're the ones that at that time the BBC used to use on the end of a pole. And so I now had 3 microphones. However, I had a 4-input mixer, so I went out and bought a cheap microphone. I can't remember what it was. But then I discovered that compared to when I was at home with my first tape machine, being in the army, I had musicians to record because we were right next to the School of Music, which is a big band, and there were about, I don't know, I suppose 100 musicians in it. And about 25 of them formed themselves into a dance band and would go out and do dances on Saturday night. So I used to turn up with all my gear. And it was quite a challenge recording, you know, 20-piece big bands or Ted Heath style band just on 4 microphones. But then that's when I started learning about mic placement and room acoustics, or hall acoustics as it was.
And did you begin recording music when you got back to London?
When I got back to London, I wanted a job. Prior to being called up, I had been offered a job by IBC as an engineer. But my call-up papers prevented me from taking that job. And when I came out of the army, they didn't have a vacancy. So I applied for a job with ATV and the BBC and got a job at the BBC. The only problem was that I was assigned to a vision crew, whereas I wanted to be on the sound crew. And they said, well, there aren't any vacancies on the sound crew, you have to work in the vision crew. As you know, I've always smoked, because it was a fashion. My dad used to have this ritual every time he and Mum went out for dinner. He'd get his silver cigarette case and fill it with cigarettes and fill his Ronson lighter with petrol. So I started smoking. And you couldn't smoke on the studio floor in a BBC, but you could smoke in a gallery, like the control room. And because I was so junior in the crew, there wasn't much for me to do. So I used to spend most of my time in the gallery, and I got fascinated by vision mixing. And a great friend of mine there, Gordon Hesketh, went out of his way to teach me how to vision mix.